Welcome to Clarion Connection. I'm Ron Wilshire, and today we're going to talk to Steve Truitt, our technical person, and Kelsey Hubert, who is the news director for statewide WWCH.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. Just I would use this opportunity to do a little bit of wrap-up for the election. Clarion County's numbers were quite a bit different than the state, and the votes were not many, but just want to take a look at that, and I do want to assure everyone that there will be no phone calls during this. Celebrity phone calls interrupting the show, and you're not on political ads. Okay, we're good there. So, Kelsey, this is the first election you've covered in Clarion for the state. Anything stand out?
Well, I'd say this election came out almost exactly as I imagined it would. You know, on a national and a state level, Democratic lean, and locally a very much Republican landslide. The workers that I talked to said that they saw a good turnout, especially in the early, and the brief exit polls that I took had most people voting straight party. But I was surprised to see in the end results that we have this morning, which are still preliminary, that there was a good turnout as far as libertarian and third-party candidates, and it was interesting to see that, especially in Clarion County.
Libertarian
yeah, that's right.
And
that's right. And Clarion County took substantial votes, almost 1,000. The others had 10,000 for the Republicans. And
I know at one point the Republicans statewide wanted to get him elected because of the possible confusion over his last name, Smith versus Smith. That didn't seem to matter last night.
Well, and, you know, they might want to do that, but legally I don't think they have any recourse to do so.
Well, they're exploring their legal options. If it's your name, it's your name.
Yeah, exactly.
But Rayburn was he's the real thing. You talk with Rayburn. I knew him in college, and he outlines his views, and I did a video of him, interview for him, and it was kind of interesting to hear his points. And I like a lot of libertarians. I don't think he's a great libertarian in the ticket, but he has his own views too. So what else happened in Clarion County?
Well, I have a preliminary tally in front of me, and these are unofficial from Clarion County's website. But it has Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan in Clarion County at least by 67%, and that's almost 5,000 votes, which I thought was interesting, given that he won, that President Obama won Pennsylvania by such a good margin. And also that Democratic Senator Bob Casey, who beat Tom Smith by about 9 points, 400,000 votes statewide, came in 5,000 votes behind Tom Smith in Clarion County, and Smith walked away with a 64% lead. And it makes me wonder whether the political advertising was more effective in our area or targeted more heavily.
I think it's probably more of a Republican area, and that shows its face here. Actually, Pennsylvania has the so-called T in it, where central Pennsylvania and parts of Pennsylvania. Well, if you look at the map that they have on TVs, it's in terms of area-wise, there's a lot more red area than blue, but it's a high population centers that are blue or Democrat.
And that's exactly it. And red, as you described it, looks like a T on the district maps. And it's definitely an interesting thing to see the way Pittsburgh and Philadelphia especially can turn the tides of these elections when, as you put it, the area of the state seems to be voting one way and the population another. That's just the beauty of statewide elections. Another thing I wanted to point out was that Clarion's own 63rd District Representative Donna Overlander came away with the most ballots cast for any single candidate in Clarion County. She had 13,800 votes. It was a walk-off, and she was unopposed. But I thought it was interesting as Scott Hutchinson, also running unopposed for the 21st District PA Senate, Mary Jo White's seat, ran unopposed, 12,500 ballots. So, if you can call that a race, not ahead.
Well, I think it goes to say something about her reputation. People do seem to like her. And Scott Hutchinson as well. He's a longtime state representative in Venango County. And so, he seems to be pretty well liked. And I had a chance to talk briefly with him at the press conference for the cookie company down in Reimersburg. And he was looking forward to it. So, they got a lot of votes in there, and of course you don't have to vote because everyone knew they were opposed.
Yeah, that's exactly the case, but she still garnered this many. Yeah, right. That was very interesting.
Any surprises at the polling locations? I know some places had signs that you need to show your ID, but yesterday wasn't that case. You didn't have to show your photo ID.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. I actually put a lot of effort into coverage of those facts and rulings in the Commonwealth Court. Speaking with our Director of Elections, Cindy Callahan, several times over the past few months about the developments in that court case, and then it went on to the State Supreme Court and then back to the Commonwealth Court. And what I noticed were signs posted around the polling stations. They had to have at least 3 up where they said, these election workers will ask for your ID. You don't have to show it unless you're voting for the first time at this polling station or this is your first time voting ever, which is state law and has been for years before the passage or implementation of this voter ID law or the lack of implementation thereof. So it was interesting to see. I stopped at 3 locations in northern Clarion County, and while I was there, I didn't see anybody requested for their ID. And that could have a lot to do with the fact that the poll workers knew who they were and who they were. They didn't actually need identification to identify these people. And perhaps that I was there giving my coverage while there was nobody coming in voting for the first time that would have been required, regardless of whether the election officials knew who they were.
Yeah, I think the election workers have worked there for a long time. And they probably, especially in the smaller precincts, do know everyone and feel comfortable with that. But some of the larger ones where there's a little bit more of a turnover, I guess, especially with the students in the voting in the Clarion area, that sometimes they don't know them.
And being that the typical student ID doesn't have an expiration date on it, then it wouldn't in fact be valid if they were voting for the first time in that election district. However, Clarion University was, in the past few months, offering free ID to students that were already enrolled and had an ID that would have an expiration date on it so that they could use it to polling places. I haven't talked to anybody that was working at St. Marvel Boyd where they would encounter more of that, but most of the election officials that I talked to said that they encountered no problems at all. If they did ask for ID, people were willing to provide it. And in fact, when I went in to vote, I wasn't asked for my ID. Of course, they knew who I was and needed no introduction, but I pulled it out anyways and said, "Would you like to see my ID?" I got my sticker and turned around and went back in because my buddy forgot to get his sticker up at Washington Township, and I took him up to get out the vote. And
well, I imagine that they'll probably look at with the voter ID as a law, maybe look at the IDs that are acceptable, like you mentioned, like a student ID with an expiration date is sufficient. I've even talked to some friends that used their NRA membership card because there's an expiration date and photo on it, and it was accepted.
Right, that's absolutely the case. And we're looking at now the possibility of when the implementation will come, which will likely be in the next month or after the new year. But we're looking forward to the primaries next spring, and most election officials are confirmed confirming, or at least confirming their expectations that this law will be fully in effect and you will need to show ID to cast a ballot. But the Department of State has taken plenty of steps to make voting-only IDs with photographs available, and done a lot of publicity. And of course, the negative publicity against the law has just further publicized it and made people aware that eventually they will need these IDs. Now, it was the policy of election workers in Clarion County and statewide under the Department of State to this election ask for ID, and if someone didn't have it, they would give them information on how to get an ID. You would still be allowed to vote, and you wouldn't be turned away. We have had some reports of people being turned away from polls, but I would imagine those are isolated incidents. By and large, if the person didn't have an ID when they went to the polls, they would just be provided with information that says, this will likely be the law the next time you vote. So please here is how to get a free ID from the Department of State. And now, any ID with a photograph and an expiration date would be valid in any case, whether it be, like you said, an NRA ID or a college ID or something issued by a PennDOT or the Department of State. And I think that most people really wouldn't have a problem obtaining that sort of ID. And if anything can be done to cut down on voter fraud, then why not? It seems like a good step to take.
The problem with student IDs in the past has been that there's no real expiration date. It's more designed to take into consideration if they paid their activity fee or if they're...
That's what it says, that RF chips and...
Usually
they just been memento.
That's right. You could scan it, and while the voting machines could do a lot of things, it doesn't take debit cards yet.
Exactly. And I'll tell you this, at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, where I started my undergrad studies in 2005, I got a part-time job at a work study working for the Fine Arts Department and selling tickets for the shows in the Fine Arts Department, theater, and musicals and stuff like that. And alumni would come in with 40-year-old student ID cards so they could still get the student discount. And I believe the statute of limitations on that would be I wasn't supposed to do that. It had to be about the activity fee paid with the RF chips and stuff. We didn't do any scanning of it.
I didn't think IUP's alumni were that thrifty.
You wouldn't believe it if you saw it.
They probably still had the big Indian on the ID card.
They were very shapes and sizes, that's for sure. But none of them looked like they came out of a printer. Most of them looked like they've been carried around with pride for many, many years, as I'm sure that the alumni of Clarion University do. But I don't think the voter ID issue was as big as it was made by the movement. I doubt that there would have been many people disenfranchised had the law been upheld. And now that it hasn't, it's almost a point beyond discussion. We'll see for the primary election if people are still vocal about it and having problems in the spring. But that's something that I doubt.
I think the concern is more, again, it's to Pennsylvania, is more in the urban area where people may not need a car or a driver's license. I mean, I was going to driver's license, and people were concerned that the urban areas were being singled out as potential ones, and of course, the urban areas are lean more democratic. And I think that was the concern, but I think with those changes that we should be okay. I mean, for that matter, churches could issue IDs with an expiration date on them. Or someplace that people are likely to go. Like the driver's license places. Well, in Clarion, they're out at the mall if you're. So they just have to work out some problems there.
Exactly. And if we're under similar political pressure that they were this time around in the spring, then it wouldn't surprise me at all that the Department of State would begin to accept IDs issued by non-governmental entities like a church or, a schools, of course, could do it now, but just other organizations like that, as long as they have a photograph and a date on it, I'm guessing that if the political pressure is similar, they'll just start accepting anything that has those two requirements.
So, anything else strike your fancy when you were out covering the election yesterday?
You know what? Honestly, this entire political season has been very interesting for me. I've noticed among people of my age group around 25, within about 5 years of my own age, there's an atmosphere of political discourse that I haven't seen before, that people are more willing to talk about politics and are more vocal about it and are more accepting of it as just a topic of discussion, and not always with the same venom that you see when people have opposing views, and it's just interesting to see among my age group people becoming more interested in politics to the point that it is an acceptable and encouraged topic of discussion, whereas in years past, even election years, politics was something that people just didn't want to talk about. And it's interesting to see the shift in that.
Well, I imagine there's a realization creeping in that the decisions made now will affect, if you're 25 now, when you're 50 and when you're 65 and that kind of thing. So there's probably concern left because in some ways, you're going to be paying the bill, so why not be interested?
Yeah, absolutely. It interests you directly in those cases.
Well, tell me, did you notice more young people voting?
I did. I couldn't compare it directly to previous years, saying that I actually witnessed more young people voting, but the demographics are going to come out eventually, and I think those will reflect a wider base of younger voters than in previous years, and we had pretty good turnout in Clarion County this year. Now, I'll have to be leaving now. I'm going to meet up with the commissioners at the public meeting.
I appreciate you taking the time out, and imagine I'll have a report on the election too.
It should be pretty exciting at the administrative building right there on Main Street, and it is a public meeting. Before I go, though, I'd like to extend a thank you to all the election workers, the county workers who worked all day at the regular jobs, and in some cases setting up the polls, and then all night tallying the ballots, and to all of our volunteers. You really make this happen, and you make Clarion County proud.
Well, Kelsey Hubert, thank you for joining us. Kelsey's the news director for C93 and WWCH. You're listening to Clarion Connection. We'll take a brief commercial break.
National Guard, aired by the Pennsylvania Association of Broadcasters and this station. Do you realize that some children and adults here in Clarion County don't have a winter coat? With cold weather already here, just imagine going outside without a warm winter coat. Operation Overcoat is a Clarion County coat collection drive sponsored by C93 FM, Radio 13, and Northwest Savings Bank. Operation Overcoat is not asking for your money or your time. We just ask you to go through your closet and donate any of your gently used and new winter coats that you no longer wear. Operation Overcoat is a need for some children and adult sizes. Accessibly cleaned and given to Clarion County Children and Youth Services and Community Action for distribution. So please, go through your closet today and donate your coats to Operation Overcoat. Your local Northwest Savings Bank office will be accepting your coat donations between October 13th and November 17th. This message is a public service of C93 FM and Radio 13.
Welcome back to Clarion Connection. I'm Ron Wilshire, and with me is Steve Truitt. And we've been talking about the election and the election results, and I'm going to spend this section of Clarion Connection talking about the people that will be really impacted by this election, the people without jobs because of the election. Steve, do you realize that all the fact checkers will be out of jobs now?
No, I'm sure there's some sort of something going on that they would need to check, but not to the great extent that we get of each political season.
Well, it's coming up a door now.
Yeah, I know they're going to know about Inspector 13 and 14 now.
With those little slips.
Yeah, so for us, I don't know if they do that anymore, but well, I was curious. I don't know if you, depending on which media you watched yesterday or anything to that nature, but I thought it was pretty interesting how I think it was channel, one of them was the NBC coverage, I believe it was, where they were doing the thing at Rockefeller Center in the ice, and they were putting the different state maps, like a state that won, whether red or blue, and then freezing it into the ice skater. I wonder if they'll keep that up to the winter. Like, just like stand to get the layer of ice and let people ice skate over top of it.
They could. I thought it was advertising that Windows 8. They had all those ads, and it's so confusing when you change that stuff. But so it was just the old-fashioned ice.
It was ice, and somebody out there, they called them, what did they call them? They called it State Ice Team 6 or something like that. I don't know what it was. They would put it out and they would carefully put the map down, and there was a guy with a spray hose, and he would spray it. I don't know.
During your hosting, dude. Nice baby. That's awesome because they all wanted to present it different visually, all the stations, but it reminds me of that commercial when there's one phone company talking about the coverage, and they showed them a couple graphs. It's all the same information showing this phone company has a big phone. And they look at each one, and it's kind of the same thing. I guess the delivery it's different, especially with the cable channels. You know which one's conservative, you know which one's liberal, and you have your preferences, so you can go look. But the delivery is different. I don't know what's going to happen to all those celebrity phone calls now that so I would thought it probably wasn't really them. It was just like actors that they hired to do the voices and then send them out.
I'm very grateful that we screen our phone calls at our house. We just let the answering machine get it and go from there. Unfortunately, not that I'm getting the 9 million robocalls this year. I did very well about not getting robocalls like for political basis and stuff like that. So
as far as it turned out that caller ID is more important than voter ID, just for your standard ID, the strange ones that I've heard of didn't necessarily mean Chuck Norris and his wife.
Chuck Norris? I don't know how you can't say no to Chuck Norris. I think it's illegal.
He was calling people to have them support Judeo-Christian values. But I thought maybe he meant Judeo-Christian values.
It could be.
Bob Barker?
Bob Barker?
Yeah.
Was the vote right? Is that what it was? Or?
What was that?
Come on, the Judeo was right.
And he was an advocate of PETA and for pets and that type of thing. And he was, there evidently was a candidate that had that. So he was calling that, but there were calls for that. And of course, Bill Clinton and everybody else, But I'm just wondering if there's like one guy there a person that was just mimicking their voices and sending it out.
Well, kind of like a professional impressionist who's just kind of sitting there and is like, hi, I'm Bob Barker today. That's what I'm going to be. Yeah. It was good. I mean, I don't know, yesterday was very pleasing. I ended up voting at Payne Township about 3 o'clock yesterday, and I was number 492. I always like to see what number I am.
Is that a lot?
492 for 3 o'clock out of 1,100. And checking the federal towers and stuff, it looks to be, just by my rough math, over 700 or close to 700 or so.
That's great.
Voted in Payne Township. So you're looking at 3/4, That's pretty good. That's somewhere around that math. But that's not bad for that. Considering whenever I voted at 6 o'clock at night on the primary, and I'm number 225 or something like that. So, but that's good. I'm glad the turnout was what it was all across the state. And I can't wait to see what the final numbers are for across the country of those who did their voting and stuff like that. It's one of those things, and it was mentioned in a speech that I heard this morning, is there's people, arguing and discussing and things like that is what makes us what we are, and it's those who, there are people across the world who are fighting right now for that right to argue their point. And it's one of those good things.
A lot of people are just glad that the TV ads are I would say that was regrettable, this Supreme Court decision around unlimited funds for whatever party, obviously, and you don't have to disclose where they're from. And it's just advocacy groups, and you can make an advocacy group. The advocacy groups always make up these great names that sound like they could be representing anything, but I think people would breathe a sigh of relief.
Everyone, we talked about this before. I understand that, we do benefit from here at the station, the political season and the advertising and things like that. But it comes to a point to where one day I was sitting here and I couldn't go 10 minutes without hearing an ad. And it gets very taxing, and the negativity that gets brought into them even more. Loose facts and negativity is a great way to really discourage. But if it wasn't effective, billions of dollars wouldn't be pumped into it. So,
well, in most TV and even radio advertising, it's more like throwing something out and see what sticks. Mm-hmm. And with all the clutter and everything out there, you want to find some way of reaching people. But like you said, that was a reason for the fact checkers to see some kind of perspective. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, you have to realize maybe it's all relief today, but today starts the 2016 campaign.
Right, it starts that, and then there's the other political, the other houses or the other seats that are open up every 2 years or 4 years in opposite times and stuff. So we'll be back in the swing of things, and fortunately with our local elections and stuff, they're not anywhere near as negative as what the Iowa is on the national level. So aside really, it may be busy, but it won't be quite as tough.
The one thing kind of reminds me of Afghanistan, and that there are many different countries that have been over there and fought, and usually, they go down to tubes. We won it once when we were secretly funding, and the Russians got out, and then, we're back drawing there. But it just seems like the political landscape has become like an unending war. A place like Afghanistan is dreary. It's dismal, and there's just sometimes you fear that there's no way out. But we'll keep on hoping.
Mm-hmm. That's all we can do, and just keep on doing our what we can do. We have the right to vote, and exercise that right, and put the people in office that we believe directly represent us, and hopefully that's what they carry on to their upper levels, and as actually representing the people that put them in the office. So,
well said. You're listening to Clarion Connection. We'll get back on target next week with a regular program, but we wanted to thank Kelsey for joining us earlier to talk about the election in Clarion County.